Hello, it's Joey and today I'm using book pages to make a junk journal cover. I'm tessellating book pages. What a wonderful word that is. So I'm gluing book pages together instead of using card, making this project more affordable and lots of fun. Then I'm collaging the front and adding texture with stamps and glue. Fabulous for using up scraps, and how many of those do you have? I've added stitching detail, although this is an optional extra. You can just use glue and add a little faux stitching by hand. These journal covers are great for using up book pages, and if you love gluing paper, then this project is definitely for you. I've also made a larger one, which I'm going to use to make a folio. So hit the subscribe button down below so you don't miss that. And I'm also super excited to say that this video is sponsored by Skillshare. I'll tell you more about them later, but I do have something exciting to give away. But first let's play with the book pages and let's make a junk journal cover. The journal cover that I'm making today is really a combination of two projects that I've made before. So one is a junk journal cover that I did a while ago in a series of 3 videos, and I made a relatively small collage cover, and that was an enormous amount of fun. I wanted to do something with more of a vintage style, so I came up with this, but I wanted to do it in a way that was perhaps a little bit more affordable and helps us use up some of our book pages. So I had a look at another project that I've got a video of here on my channel, and I really enjoyed a while ago making this envelope folder with a page from a book about birds. This paper is, well, it's thick paper, so I added cardstock when I made this folio and the folio cover, and I really wanted to have a go at something that didn't use cardboard, that was a little bit more maybe easily accessible and affordable. So I've come up with a solution that is something in the middle, where we tessellate book pages and glue them together, do some collage on the front, and I'm going to choose a vintage style today, and then I'm going to add a little bit more detail by way of stamping, and there's a bit of mica spray on here. A lot of these extra details are optional, just use what supplies you have. I'm sewing on it to add more robustness. Again, this is optional, you can use enough glue to keep it all together. So I'm going to make a journal cover that would suit something like the kind of junk journals that I love to make. So I like making relatively large ones and then doing some journal spreads in them. So I'm going to make it large enough to be able to take pages like these, like something that's more of an A5 style. Here's another example. I really love putting together these eclectic styles with different types of book page inside. I used just a relatively thick piece of paper, a map page for this one. This was a really old one of my first that I did. This journal cover will be thicker, and I decided to make it larger so that we could have an extension on the right hand side to convert into an inner pocket. So this does look large, it is, and the idea is that you make it whatever size you want it to be, and I will take this cover and then convert it into a journal with a fold and a folded pocket at the back. So after the video today, I'll be playing with one of these and making maybe a basic junk journal as part of my beginner series. So what we need today to do this is obviously some book pages. I have a lovely book here which is 14 centimetres by 22 centimetres. That's not prescriptive, so you can have any book size you like. My suggestion is that it is, ideally for this project and the vintage theme, something a little bit yellowed, and helpfully, I think I was told that when it's yellow around the side, that's called foxing. Is that right? Have I got that right? Because this book page is matte, I think that makes it a bit easier to glue together, and that's the real heart of what we're doing to make the journal cover today. And then what I'm going to do on top is add, as you can see on this example, a mixture of scraps of paper and images. Now obviously use what you have, dig into your supplies, dig into your scraps. Let's use up some of those scraps because that makes us feel good, doesn't it?
On top of the collage, I've added a few little effects. So I have added some stamps, whatever stamps you have, pull some of those out. I've added a little bit of glitter glue, well, mica glue actually, and I've used my finger and a bit of water just to get some texture on and some glimmer. I've added some mica spray, so it's a chance to really play and have fun. So I'll start by gluing the book pages together in a particular format. Let's tessellate those book pages, and then we'll have the fun of doing the collage on top. The first thing I'm going to do is tear off some of these book pages and glue them together. So for a cover this size, which is about 25 centimetres by, I think that's about 45 centimetres, I probably need about 8 to 10 sheets, and we're going to do some doubling up to give it some robustness. So let me just tear off some of these. One of the most satisfying parts of the process. Quite tough. There's a degree of resistance going on here. Right, I'll set the rest of the book aside, and I'm going to glue these together with a degree of overlap. And really the only difficult, if indeed it is difficult, thing to do is to work out how you want to position the second sheet on top of the first, meaning how high or how deep do you want your cover to be. So I'm going to take my glue, and I'm using not a stick today. I thought I'd use a relatively liquid glue, and I want the cover to be big enough to house my A5 sheets of paper. So my guide, or the important first step, is the pieces of paper that you want to go in this journal cover. And I'm putting the second piece of paper perpendicular to the first, and I'll just see how high I've got it. That's actually quite a good guess. Not bad for first thing in the morning. So I know that this was the height that I wanted, and all I've done is place this second sheet very neatly, as neat as I can, on top of the first. So already we've got some doubling up going on here. Now a suggestion for thinking ahead about how deep you want this to be. So you can see I haven't gone all the way to the bottom, so this second piece of paper is sticking out a little bit more. That's okay. When I use these covers to make folios, and I'll show you an example. So this is the example where I've had a bit of a play. I've added a tie so it can hold together really well. I wanted still to use some of the book pages from that bird book. So on this one I've made sure that the height of the journal cover or the folio cover is enough to allow the page to go in that I know I want to add. And indeed I made it tall enough so that I had a little bit of extra, about 3/4 centimetre at the top and bottom, because I still wanted to have the sewing that I'm doing around it, some of the stitches showing through, and I love that texture. On this example I've also sewn in green, which goes really well with the green in the picture. So if you do want to use an image on the inside of your journal cover, you have one in mind, you have a book in mind to use, think ahead about using that height of book as the dimensions for the height of your journal cover today. It's cute, isn't it? And it's so easy. And it means that you're not dependent on using or having expensive cardstock. You can make a cover that's any size, and you can use up your book pages, and you get to do some lovely gluing. So here we go. All we do now is just move to the right, adding some extra pages and overlapping them. And it's as simple as that. So I'm going to not necessarily have some exact formula here, but I will add a bit of glue on the back and just find a place for it that overlaps some of the pages that we've already put together. I'm not looking for a complete doubling up to begin with, but I do want some. And don't worry if when you put glue on your piece of paper you perhaps have still got a bit that's unglued, because it's so easy just to pick up a bit of the flap and add a bit more, and when we get to the end we'll do some tidying up. So I've got the right height. Let's work to the right. We'll just pick another one and we'll add that, let's say, down here as a horizontal, more horizontal page. So I'll put a bit of glue on here and attach that. And I'm perfectly okay that with some of this tessellating, I get to have 3 layers of book page in some places. So where I've just stuck that book page, I've got a top sheet, this page and one behind. So some of the parts of this journal cover will be thicker than others, but that's absolutely fine. It just means that it's going to be robust enough. I think I'll have an upright overlapping. So I'll have something on here. And if I add a water-based glue like this, or a more watery glue, and don't use a Pritt stick, it does mean that I can move some of these pages around as well. Let's glue that on there. It's very calming, very relaxing. I think it's very satisfying to feel like we are using up some of our book pages and making indeed something that's quite specific if we want it to be a certain size. Keep moving to the right, and I know that at some point soon I'm going to have to think about how wide it's going to be. So why don't I I'll add a page up here. So far we've had upright, portrait style pieces. So we'll add something over here. I'm going to start thinking about the width, because I don't want to trim at the side. I'd rather have a more natural finish to the edges. I'd like that to be the actual end of a book page. So let's see where we've got to in width. So you might, oh, I don't believe it, it's even on. Oh, it's a fluke. You might need to do a little bit of measuring as you're going. So I want, of course this doesn't need to be incredibly accurate, because what I'm going to do is fold to make the journal cover, and just fold a little bit of what's left at the back to make a pocket, an inner pocket on the back cover. So I'll have another page down here. Like that. And at this point, I think what I will do is just consider how thin some of the areas are, how much more I want to add in terms of extra layers and pages on top. So again, that's a choice you have as to how thick you want this journal cover to be. And I've only got one sheet at the top here, so I think what I will do is add an extra one here and go over. In fact, I'll make that sit in a different, sit upright, so that can go on top. You must remember, I guess, that we're going to put some collage on top, and that in itself will add 1 or 2 more layers, not only of paper but also of glue. And even when we come to add, if you want to, some gesso on the top, that will add robustness as well. I feel like I want a bit more over here because this is just single layer as well. So you can see how it's a bit of an estimate how many pages you actually need, and that's really up to you. So I'll have, another thing I like is to keep the frayed edge at the edge. I quite like that, and how it will end up when we're finished. I'm trying to be a bit tidy, lining up along the edges. I'll never get it perfect, and that's absolutely fine. And we're nearly there. We are nearly there. So I think what I'll do is add a bit more glue just to hold down these various pages that just got partially glued as we layered them. So just picking up the pieces and adding a little bit. It's so quick, isn't it? It's quick and it's easy. And it sets us up for so many projects, whether that's a folio, a junk journal, whatever we want to do to decorate them, whatever styles. I actually have a little bit of an idea of doing something that's more boho style and colourful. There's an idea forming at the moment, so I might do one of these and then decorate it with some lovely vibrant colours. So we're pretty much there on the basics of the journal cover. What I want to do is go and grab my papers, go and grab my scraps, have that lined up around my workspace so I can just grab and put things on and make a beautiful vintage journal cover. So the ingredients for today's cake that are now sitting around me are these little images. These are from an Andrea Allen DigiKit, and I know that not everybody has access to DigiKits, so it's definitely a moment for you to have a think about cutting images out of books. Maybe not so much magazines because you get glossy paper, but any images will do for this. Use what you have and have fun. So I've got some images that I'm going to choose to place across the collage, and I'm also going to have a play with a few little bits of ephemera and mix that in. So these are lovely little pieces with different shades of, this one is almost a grey white, a creamy white. I've got a very warm fawn colour, and I like this because of the black in that as well. So I'll just pull on a few of the, oh, I think I've even sprayed these with mica. If it doesn't move, it gets sprayed with a mica spray in my craft room at the moment. So I'll have those on the left hand side. I pulled out my lovely chunky stack of papers to tear from, and one thing I wanted to share is how I refresh and keep motivated with some of the papers that I use, because I think if you are using the same papers all the time you can feel a bit stale. So what I did before I pulled on this batch, I went round my craft room, and I really like doing this. This is the fun bit, it really is. I just pulled out some papers from either scrapbook pads, so I've got some extra sheets added in here to lighten things up, freshen things up and have something a bit different. I've got a really nice vintage page here with music on. I think that's absolutely gorgeous. I've been thinking about integrating just the tiniest bit of teal into my projects, and I think that goes with a vintage theme. I really like that. I've used these spots before on some envelopes that I decorated recently. So I've been adding some new pieces of paper to my little folders that I pull on when I'm working on a project. So I've also got in here, what did I see there? I've got a piece of paper that I think looks quite aged. Is that fair to say? Let me know. So this is one that, if you can see the sheen, I've taken the same book page and I dunked it in just an old plastic tub that had chocolates in, and in the liquid I mixed acrylic paint and metallic fabric paint, and as you can see I added quite a lot of liquid and colour, and I just let it dry on. I laid out some packing paper, I let that dry along with about 20 other sheets, so I did a bit of a mass making, and you get these glorious variations to your pages in such beautiful colours. I think I added some red to the paint in this one, so I've added one of those sheets in here, and that might be something to tear up, and it makes me feel really good because I've personally added to a book page and done something special with it. What else have I got? I'm going to rip up some of these trial pictures where I've painted in the past. I pulled a page out from my mum's old weather diary, and I like adding that to projects because it's got, I think, really nice handwriting. There's nothing too personal on it, it's just about the weather, but she liked to just record that, and as it is February at the moment and it just feels special, I've added that to my collection of papers. Maybe a bit of purple to start thinking about. I don't think I'll use purple today, but I am thinking about using a journal cover like this to make something with a purple theme. I think that would be fantastic. In fact, let me give you an idea. I thought I'd do something like a summer honey and lavender journal, and Cara Brandon, who has a lovely channel here on YouTube and an Etsy store, and I have, I'm not sponsored, this is just papers I love. These are things that I might use in the future to add instead of vintage, just ringing the changes. Imagine this as a beautiful blend of lavender colours, purples and black and cream, and I might cut out some of these lovely images that she has in one of her DigiKits. So I just thought I'd share that with you today. I get really excited when I see different colours, and I'm sorry it's not part of the journal cover making video really, but I just wanted to share some of these. I'm excited about using this. Anyway, let's get on and add some ripped piece of paper to our basic cover so we can move on and make the journal cover. So I've whittled down my papers to something a little bit less, and I'm just going to pull from these and start the tearing and the cutting and sticking. And I find that all I need is one good beginning and the rest of it flows. So I'm going to make the corners of my journal cover quite strong in design. So I am going to take something with bold text on, so something that I know I really want to see at the top right of the cover, and once we get going I think everything else just drops into place. With this journal cover I am going to use my usual technique of putting glue in the centre of a piece and not gluing down at the edges until I'm done, because I'm going to cover most of this with other pieces of paper, and I can show you on this finished one. I've got my bold design feature at the top right. I've also been quite clear to get something bold on the top left and the bottom left, and everything else is really easy just to drop into place, I find, if we get some of these in place. So I've chosen to take from, this is a Tracie Faux Digi. Again, have a look in your other book pages and choose what would work for you to create something bold in those top right and top left positions. And I don't know why I feel like this really, because any sort of collage on the back of this as a journal cover would work. This is just my method. So I'm going to go through my pieces and taking relatively big ones as well on some of the projects that I've done recently. So what have we done? We've done some index cards, I've done some envelopes. I've used smaller pieces, and it's perfectly fine, I think, given the proportion of this, to use larger pieces, which obviously helps us to go a bit faster too. So at the moment there's not a lot of science now. I'm picking up pieces, gluing them on and tucking them under another one. So I think I'm going to add something teal. So treat myself to a piece from this. Very naughty, ripping up 12 by 12, I think. I don't know why. I feel like I ought to preserve it sometimes for something better. It's that hoarding instinct. Tell me you have a hoarding instinct too. Make me feel better. So that can go on there. I think I'll have one sitting, that can go underneath. And we just keep going. And something I am not too worried about on this one is having gaps. So that also makes life a little bit easier. I'm moving around and moving in from the outsides with my pieces. I'm not too worried about having a gap because I actually intentionally, I quite like having some of these gaps, and I am going to go over the top with a little bit of paint as well. There we go. Still feels cold. Yes, it does, but it has picked up recently and it is feeling a little bit nicer. I like this sheet. This is a K&Co sheet from a large stack, and it has sort of a faux stamp on it and a bit of distressing, and it's a really jolly colour. So I'm going to balance with teal over here, so these are balanced right and left, so I've got a bit of colour going on. That's nice, I'll trim it off after. Right, so now I've got some of my pieces of paper down, I'm going to start moving on to adding some of the other details. So I'm going to pull out some little labels or images and start to build those in and distribute them across the whole of the journal cover. I don't want too many, so I'm going to leave spaces between most of them and maybe add a little bit of layering. So let's have a go at some of that as we build this up as well. I like the position of that one because I've managed to go under this one, on top of that one, and it's also straddled some of the book pages and the layers, so I get extra points for that, I think. Obviously no two journal covers are going to be the same, it's going to be absolutely a function of not only what you have in your supplies, but what you're feeling like on the day, what colour tones and palette you choose, how you want to incorporate images or not, how you want to use text in your design. Nice piece of spotty paper. And as I add to this one, I am thinking I want to be careful that I'm not using too much scrapbook paper, because I want the feeling of this being very much little pieces of book page as well. So I think I'm going to add a book page on top. That would be nice down there. Yeah. I don't want so much of a straight edge. I'll get that in there. This is a children's book with very nice large font, which is always great for in our collage. Very nice bit of ephemera. Very pretty. Can go under. And obviously as we add these pieces, we're adding strength to the book pages that we have as the basic cover, so it does build up. In fact, I'm going to start looking at my various little ladies' images to build those in as well. And again, what I want is, I want a really strong image on the front of the cover. So I'm going to do a bit of layering here. Oh, yes, it's coming together. So use what you have and reduce that pile of scraps. Do you think it's working? Do you think it's coming together? Should we have a little man? Have a little man hiding down here. Just giving a little bit of space to this image so that we don't overcrowd her and let her really shine. And I also like the beautiful yellows in this and how they go with the yellows of this photograph too. What should we have? Everything is possible, really positive. I think that goes very well. So from an Artie Mays Digi, this one, but you could absolutely just use your own handwriting. In fact, might have a go at that, just to show we can all do it. Nice message there. Look at lady down there. Something that helps to bring it together, these images all to merge and become one complete beautiful collaged cover, is when we add a little bit of paint on top. So that will really, really help. I think we're getting there. I'm okay with some of these gaps remaining, but still got too many at the moment. I think it's okay to have another bit of text on here. I think we'll have that on top. Always good to have music paper in a collage. I think that works well. That can go underneath. So it's at this point that I'm quite pleased that I didn't take my glue to the edges. Makes it so much easier when you get to the final pieces. I'm going to get my message to just go over the top. So do we think that's enough? I think it probably is. So what I'm going to do now is take my glue, go round these flaps settle them down and glue them down, and then we'll think about sewing and decorating. So at this point, if you don't want to sew or you don't have a sewing machine, you could go around the edge with a pen and add some faux stitches. I think as long as you've put a really firm set of glue down and you're holding down all these little pieces, this is absolutely fine to move straight on then to decorating, to adding the extra paint and the effects. What I am going to do is add a running stitch around the side, and that will hold down the edges just a tiny bit more. I want there to be maybe some running stitch and some zigzag, just playing around, something on the left and something on the right. So there'll be something on the back cover, on the inside of our journal cover, there'll be something on the front of the cover, and I think that's enough. And because this is quite large, you may be limited on where you can sew with a machine because it will be difficult to get it underneath the foot. So I also think it's perfectly fine to limit yourself to whatever you can do, whatever you can achieve with your sewing machine. So I've set up with today I actually have a deep green thread on the sewing machine. When I made this one I had a dark chocolatey brown, and I think that works really, really well. And then when we've sewn, we will add some of these beautiful distressing effects and have a fun time stamping. So as I sew this cover, I can share that exciting news. The sponsor of this video, Skillshare, is an online learning community with literally thousands of inspiring classes for creative people like you and me. You can join classes on topics such as making ephemera and decorating a junk journal, but also topics such as painting with Peggy Dean. You may know her as the author of Botanical Line Drawing. But what about a cheat's guide to bookbinding, watercolour for beginners, or even mindfulness and meditation? I took a class called Yes, You Can Draw, Reconnect with Your Creative Self by Amandine Thomas, and I took away a big reminder from this class. It's about having fun, we don't need to put so much pressure on ourselves, feed your inner child. Skillshare content is curated specifically for learning, meaning there are no ads. The classes have these chapters for finding the very specific content that you need, and the lessons are led by people who share their stories from the heart, so it's very real. They're always launching new premium classes so you can stay focused and motivated, and it's less than $10 a month with an annual subscription. So the first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description will get a free trial of premium membership so you can explore your creativity. Now back to my junk journal cover, and let's stamp and add some glue. So what I want to do now is add some of this aged feel, these extra pieces of texture and colour and gold shimmer and dainty effect. So I've added the sewing on mine here today. I've done it all in one single line. So I started at the right, I went in and down in a zigzag using a zigzag stitch. I've gone across in a different stitch, running stitch, and just started to come up, and this was the way in which it had allowed me to do the sewing without actually stopping and having to cut the thread. I did begin by going all the way round with a running stitch, and it does help, the sewing does help to strengthen this. And I also think if you can add some kind of border, even that if that's faux stitching, it starts to bring this together visually as a picture. I think it's a league better than when it didn't have that boundary around it, and it feels like it's an intentional space that we're filling in. So I'm going to use a few different things now, really playing, let's be honest. I like to use this as an excuse to have a go at using lots of our supplies. So I have around me some gesso, I have a stamp, I've got a postage stamp and a grungy little detail acrylic stamp. I've got a sponge that I'll use for dibbing and dabbing. I've got some water. I have a text acrylic stamp that will add great texture. I've got an ink pad, my little grungy palette that I'll do some mixing in, and I've got my ready made up mica powder and water that I've been using in all sorts of different projects. Today, to add some colour to mix with the gesso and water, I'm going to have a little play with some paints that I haven't used for a little bit of time, and I want to really use them and get the most from my supplies. So I'm just going to pull a couple of colours from my Arteza metallic acrylic set, which are just delicious. So I want something deepish, darkish. Don't know perfectly what I need. That looks nice. Pearl space grey. Maybe a pearl deep brown. That sounds good. Maybe the gold. And over here I like this olive green. So some lovely deep grungy colours there. So this is doing well, this set. I love playing with these. It's a set of 36. I'll just show you the lid. I love the fact that they're metallic. There's something about the magpie in me. 36 metallic acrylic colours. You've got gold, Aztec gold, copper gold. You've got those purples, these beautiful shades of orange and yellow. A good range of greens, some with a blue tone and some with this lovely fresh spring green. So, time to play with a tiny bit of colour without going over the top because it is a vintage theme. So let's swap out the one that we've done and bring in Ye Candidate here, and before we operate on this particular patient, let's get our paint into the palette. Lovely deep dark. I won't need much of these. How about this one? It just feels at this stage that, having done the work of putting the base layer together and the collage, that we're totally entitled to go mad and use whatever we like. No formula. Right, so I'll add a bit of gesso, and this will add that matte, whitish perspective to the top of the collage. I'll daub some on. I'm going to daub it in with the gold, apparently. I'll have a daub of it here, and I want it to be relatively watery. Are we meant to use gesso neat? I don't know. Let me know. I think I'll add a tiny bit of green because I've got the teal in the collage, so I'll just daub a bit of that. That's a really useful green, that one. So this is called Pearl Olive. Arteza acrylic, 22mm in a lovely tube that I'm working through. I think what I'll do is get some water on here. Why don't I help myself? Speed things up. Spray with my mica and water, and this is made with a relatively strong concentration of mica powder and water so that I get some of that bronzing coming through. I'm going to get some of this daubed on, and then I'm just going to go round with my sponge and spread it out a bit. Nothing too difficult about this. Don't want it to dry, so I'm going to act quite quickly, and I'm being quite generous with the water. So let's see how we go with that. I think I'll get some water on my sponge. Just dab that around. I think you'll find that it gets a little bit wet, and that's okay. It doesn't even matter if it makes some of these images just warp a little bit, but we don't want it to be soaking wet because I don't want it to ripple too much. So I've got some of that on now. I think I will go for some text. So I've got my acrylic stamp and an Adirondack ink pad in ginger, much used. So I've inked up my stamp, and I'm going to add it to the cover. Not completely everywhere, but definitely over some of these images because I think it's great to take out just a little bit of the clarity. If you wanted to add more labels or text or any sort of small images at this stage on top, you feel like you just want to add some extras, that's perfectly fine, put those on as well. And I did say I would do some writing, didn't I? What could we do? Do I have my ink pen handy? I happen to have brought it up with me. So let's just show that we can do it all by hand as well. We don't have to have digits with sentiments. Few extra words. Got a little bit of glue here, and this has mica in it, and I just thought the colour of it was really pretty. So I'm wetting my finger, get the glue on it, and it doesn't mix with the water, it just seems to sit on your finger, and I just add it. I think it's a bit like what I've seen some polish or texture, is it texture paste with mica in it? But it's a great way of using some of your supplies in a different way. I felt like this was such a gorgeous rich antique gold colour, so why not look at it as a medium for adding colour? It's not the easiest to get out of the tube and you will get rather messy, so if you have any of these and you feel like you want to use them and you haven't given them much love, this is a way to just get a little bit of that magic of the colour onto your collage. And you will get messy fingers, but that's part of the fun. So I think I want to add a little bit more distress, just a bit here and there with a stamp. And I'm going to use my little circular stamp here on the edge of the image, so half on, half off. That's good. Not too many, although it's tempting to keep going. I've also seen a little bit sticking up, so I'm going to just a little bit of surgery on the corner. And we've got something that's really built to a different being. It's so different from that. See how plain that is, even though it's a gorgeous vanilla, what we've created on the top. I think all I want to do is add something to this side so that if I want to use it for the inside and see it, I can. So I'm going to go in with the mica spray, and you can see a little bit of that bronzing effect coming out. The other thing I quite like with this is every now and again the spray drips and I get these extra blobs of richness of colour, which I really think is good. I like that. And I think I'll go in one last time with my sponge on this side and a little bit of my gesso, just a bit of a dib and a dab, so that it really does look like it's been grungified in somebody's drawer, somebody's attic, somebody's life has been tucked in a little trunk somewhere for a while and we've pulled it out. It's not too wet, I'm not scraping across the page, just letting it settle in blobs, being what it wants to be, and enjoy. And this is my journal cover using lots of old book pages. Give me a thumbs up if you've enjoyed seeing me make this, and subscribe if you'd like to see more. I'll be turning one of these covers into a folio, so come back and see me make that, adding lots of lovely envelopes and pockets and a flip-flap mechanism and a large pouch. I have a video on my channel for making these pouches if you'd like to get ahead. I'll leave a link to that in the description box down below. And in the meantime, have a fantastic time playing with your scraps, putting together your journal cover and collages. I hope to see you soon.